Hello everybody and welcome to the next session of Marketers on the Move. And today I've got a very, very special guest for you. Her name is Jo Thompson from Birmingham in the United Kingdom. Hello there, Jo.
Hello there, Peter. It's a real pleasure to be here talking to you, and thanks for having me, because I know you're a very busy man, but I do appreciate your time, and yeah, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, Jo. I've been waiting a long time to have this interview with you because you're one person who's always impressed me. So let me go ahead and share the bio. And because I'm getting old and decrepit, I'm going to read it if you don't mind, because I can't remember all the words you gave me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Here we go. Jo Thompson suffered for 30 years from social anxiety disorder. And she really does understand just how much social anxiety affects a person and limits their enjoyment of life. I mean, 30 years is one heck of a long time.
It is.
She now runs a YouTube channel, Social Anxiety Channel, and a Facebook support group, Social Anxiety Solutions, where you can come even on your hardest and most trying day, right, and leave feeling inspired, encouraged, and uplifted. That's pretty darn special, Jo.
Thank you.
Jo teaches the same simple and effective strategies she learned to relieve and overcome her own social anxiety. So if you suspect you may have social anxiety, or you know you are suffering from the disorder, please do reach out to Jo, because she loves teaching others how they can also become less anxious and fearful in social situations. And in particular in this time of coronavirus, even more so that they should be reaching out to you.
Well, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, never a true word spoken, more spoken. It's very true. I think when you have social anxiety, because of the coronavirus outbreak now, that's going to make people, it's going to worsen their social anxiety for them, because it's bad enough that they live with the disorder and they don't get much social contact and they keep holding themselves back, that now that everyone has to socially, isolate themselves in the home, they're going to lack the practice of getting out and socializing, and they're going to feel even more as though they're digging themselves deeper and deeper into the hole. Well, if I haven't got the opportunity to go out and socialise, then how am I supposed to overcome social anxiety? So yeah, it's made it a lot more difficult for them. My personal experience of social anxiety was, I'd always been quite a shy child growing up, but it came to a head as soon as I reached adulthood. It just became progressively worse. I found myself not really going out as much as my peer group. And I always used to feel very self-conscious around others in social situations. And I always just knew that I felt very uncomfortable, whether it's going out to the pub, even around my work colleagues. I progressively felt more and more uncomfortable. And what I've noticed in my Facebook group is the common sign and symptoms that I find everyone talking about is that they don't feel that they will be accepted by other people, that they feel that there's something inherently wrong with them. And that was something that was identified with myself in my therapy. They actually identified what was known as a defectiveness life trap. And I think that is the core sort of feelings that people do feel about themselves with social anxiety. I'm somehow not acceptable to other people. If they were to get to know the real me, they wouldn't like me anyway.
So Jo, are you saying to me that what social anxiety disorder is a lack of confidence that people have in the fact that people may like them?
Absolutely. Essentially, at the root of social anxiety disorder is that the person does not think, or automatically thinks and feels that if I were to show the real me, I would not be accepted, I would not be liked. They inherently feel that they've got some inherent flaw, they feel defective, that the real me is not acceptable, I'm somehow immediately unlikable to everyone out there. And because of that, when they do enter into a social situation, they just cannot function like, you know, the sort of the average person, if you will. It's like, I'm, you know, no one is really going to like me, warm to me. They're going to see that I'm nervous. They're going to see that I'm anxious. They're going to judge me. It's also it's a natural fear of feeling judged, and hence that's why they're so socially anxious in situations with other people. I'm immediately going to be judged. People are going to immediately pick up on how nervous and anxious I am. And of course it's a vicious cycle then, that just, and because they sort of are in their own head all the time, which I did, and I totally understand. I used to dig inside my own head all the time, catastrophize that, oh, if I've just been invited to such and such party, and as soon as I get there, you know, what am I going to say? They're not going to like me. And it's a real illness. And it's only in recent times that it's actually been recognised, like depression, as being on that, you know, that continuum. It entered recently, a few years back, in the you know, the diagnostics manual, psychological diagnostic manual, and it's now recognised as, you know, an illness just like depression. But I firsthand, I was lucky. I worked for an international law firm in London, and I became ill and I started losing time from work, and it's only through the employers. They really wanted to help me, and I was one of the lucky ones. And through my employer's insurance, health insurance, I was very lucky, and I ended up going into therapy. I had cognitive behaviour therapy by a leading London psychiatrist, and that did help me a lot. And I've by and large overcome a lot of the difficulties that I had back then. But it's something that you have to work on a daily basis. You have to work on yourself. It's like, you know, when weeds grow and we have to keep removing them in the garden. Otherwise, if we don't remove them, they'll just keep popping up in your head. You do have to put the work in for yourself.
That's great advice. That's great advice, Jo.
What I mean? And yeah, okay, you know, I'll be honest, I still have my wobbles. I still have my times where I feel uncertain. You know, I approach, even now, some situations with a little bit of trepidation, but my gosh, I mean, I have come a long way. I mean, back then when I was in the grip of it, I would never be able to hold a conversation with you now, Peter. It'd be like, well, I just can't do that. That's impossible. And it really was. So I do totally understand. And I know what it feels. I mean, what happens as well is that you often enter into a social situation and you have like an out-of-body experience where everyone is around you. And you're just like, there you are, you're frozen on the spot, and you have like, yes, it's what I can only describe as an out-of-body experience where, as I say, everyone is around you, but you just feel like numb. You're remote. You're paralysed. You don't know how to function. But what I was able to do once I did receive help was I was able to sort of compartmentalise my feelings and give myself a good talking to, only because of the cognitive behaviour therapy the treatment that I had, that I was able to, you know, teach myself what to do, how to overcome such anxiety there and then in that situation. But it takes work. I mean, there are some people online who who make out that you can overcome this in like a week or even a few months. That's an absolute load of rubbish. And I would advise anyone that, no, you're not going to suddenly overcome a lifetime of anxiety in like 30 days. It's a load of rubbish. And I would if people tell you that, I would run from them straight away. The first thing I would advise is that you have to, the first port of call should obviously to go straight to your GP, and then really talk them through it, tell them exactly how you're feeling, and ask them for a referral to your local psychiatrist. You have to work through it through a proper program. And there's tips that I can help people with, but I'm not I'm not a doctor. I would advise them to get help first through their GP. And you can overcome it. I think from what I'm seeing in my Facebook group, a lot of people are thinking, they're believing rather, that they're never going to overcome it. They're never going to, it's going to be something they're going to put up with for life. And that's just not true. And I'm seeing, quite understandably, quite a lot of it. It's like they've got it's depressed them, really, because depression and social anxiety go hand in hand often. When you're diagnosed with social anxiety, it's often because you are suffering from depression as well. But they go hand in hand, because it's understandable. If you're feeling very anxious, it would bring on depression. And if you're doubting yourself and you're believing that no one is ever going to, to like you and to warm to you, it's quite natural. Yeah, it really is.
Actually, you've answered a question that you preempted what I was going to ask you, because I was going to ask you that very thing. Can you really cure social anxiety in a matter of weeks or months, as some people are claiming on the internet? And obviously you're saying absolutely no. These people are charlatans, right?
No, you can't. Yeah, I do have a habit of doing that. Because I've got so much to share about social anxiety and how I can
That's fine. I think it's great.
It's absolutely true. You really cannot. I say that it came to me automatically, because I've seen quite a few programs now online about social anxiety, and it strikes me as they are really like pulling people into a false sense of security and confidence that I've got the magic 30-day program. It's absolutely rubbish, because when you have treatment with a medical specialist, you're still going to have your wobbles. And the first thing I want to say to people is, don't be hard on yourself. But that's all part and parcel of the disorder. You are very much prone to being hard on yourself and judging yourself and catastrophizing and trying to predict the future. But I would be the first to say, don't be hard on yourself. Even when you're going through treatment through your GP and you've been referred to a specialist, you will have times where you will wobble, absolutely. And you just need to be easy on yourself, because for however long you've suffered from social anxiety, whether it's 5 years, it's just something that's been a recent diagnosis, or it's something that you suspect you've suffered for the last 10 or 15 years, or in my case, even 30 years, or even all of your life. I know that there are older people out there, older than myself, who know that they've suffered with social anxiety all of their life. But just be hard on yourself, because you spent a lifetime believing that you're unlikable and believing that, there's something wrong with you. I've got a fatal flaw. I'm strange. I've seen it all in my Facebook group. I'm strange. I'm weird. People, don't be hard on yourself, because, it will get better. But you have to you have to work at it. You have to go through the exercises that you're advised by your psychologist, whatever.
So let me segue into the next question, because that's a perfect lead-in.
Yes.
What should people do, Jo, if they suspect or know they're suffering from social anxiety? What should they do first?
The first thing they should do is stop suffering in silence, right? They need to acknowledge that the problem is affecting their life, that it's really impacting their life and making them feel more and more upset, more and more anxious, worried, and that it's actually impacting on their life, where it's ruining your life, and that it's having such a big impact on your life that you're not getting the most out of life like you should do, that you should feel confident and struggling with conversation with your peer group, that you would want to go out and actually think, I'll go to the pub and I never know who I might meet there. The first thing they should do is they should go to their GP, to their doctor, and really, really pour their heart out, as I did. Tell them, look, I'm just not coping. I'm anxious all the time. I can't go out of my house. I feel that I'm worried about being judged all the time. I mean, I remember when I was actually referred to the specialist in London, he was a psychiatrist. I did break down and cry, and he knew straight away. I said, I just worry about, I can only give the advice from how it affected me and how I poured my heart out when I saw my specialist. I said, look, I feel so upset. I worry about constantly feeling judged by other people. I cannot relax in social situations. I get through them, and and I'll emphasize, I just get through the situation, but not without an awful lot of anxiety, an awful lot of feeling highly uncomfortable, feeling that I'm being, as I say, judged. They don't really like me. And as soon as I said that to him, he just straight away, he says, you've got social anxiety, and it's curable. Don't worry. It's just practice. You will get through this in time. I urge anyone, don't suffer in silence.
Great advice, Jo. Don't suffer in silence, right?
Don't suffer in
Reach
silence.
out, because there is help for you. That's what the message is, right?
There is. And I think from what I've seen in my Facebook group, I really think that it's like they're giving up on themselves. That's what I'm noticing in the group, that I'm beyond. It's almost as if they believe that they're beyond help, but it's just not true. It takes practice. I mean, when I started having my therapy sessions, my therapist and my consultant, because I also used to have to go back every 6 weeks to see my psychiatrist as well, because obviously my therapist was reporting back. They always used to say to me, it's just practice, Jo. It's because, you have gone out over the years, but you're not really getting as much social practice as a lot of people have who can, do interviews, who can, go onto YouTube and who can, even hold a presentation in front of 10,000 people. It's like nothing to them, because they've had more practice. It's as simple as that. And that's what they used to keep telling me. It's with practice, you will overcome it, and it becomes habituated behavior. It's like I reached a stage where when I did start practicing so much, I reached a stage where I felt so happy inside, where it was like, you think, my God, I'm just like everybody else. I can talk to people, and without feeling, obviously anxious, but without fear of judgment, and that I'm coming across all wrong. What do they think of me? They must think I'm strange, which is what I'm seeing in my Facebook group. You actually start to reach a point where, because of obviously all the knowledge you've gained by getting you better, your therapist, and them giving you the strategies and the tips on how to overcome your distorted thinking, because that's what's at the core of it. It's distorted thinking, and there's different kinds. There's catastrophizing, fortune telling, basically fearing the worst. There's so many. You actually end up saying to yourself, well, actually, I don't even so much care. Actually, I'm me. I'm as good as anybody else. I don't actually care what people think. And that's how you should do. You should be reaching that point where you feel proud of yourself, and actually I can't. I'm just like everyone else. And it takes time, but people will get there. That they definitely will. But the worrying thing at the moment that I've noticed in the group is that they really do think that there's no hope for them, and that they couldn't possibly overcome it and stuff. And that's simply not true. You don't have to be stuck with social anxiety for the rest of your life. You really don't.
And Jo, that's really what I want to ask you. I mean, you've overcome social anxiety, even though you said you still have the wobbles sometimes, right?
Yes.
But why do people suffer in silence? Is it because of ignorance, that they don't know that there's a solution they can have? Or is it because of a fear of going any further? Why would they suffer in silence? I don't understand.
The reason why they would suffer in silence is, if they were anything like me, because I totally relate to them suffering in silence, is because, first and foremost, I believe it's because they genuinely think that they will never overcome it, that there's no help, that any treatment out there would just not get them over it, that they're somehow a permanent hopeless case, that nothing will work for me. That's what they believe. Again, what I've been noticing in my Facebook group, that you see, people have actually mentioned that they've gone out and they've tried to interact with people, but they've messed it up. And so again, all of a sudden what they do, that's it, I messed up again. Somebody laughed at me for looking nervous, coming across shy and anxious. They kind of like, well, it all went wrong again. That's it. I'm gonna give up. There's something wrong with me. I'm a hopeless case. People just laugh at me. It's something I've got to live with. I've seen those words in my Facebook group. Maybe it's just something I've got to live with, because they give up. But I think it's also because why people do suffer in silence is not only because of what I've just mentioned, but because they, how can I put it, they just somehow, they really just fundamentally think that there is something wrong with them, and that they are so different, and they're just strange and to everyone else, in the world.
It's very sad, Jo, isn't it? It's very sad.
It is very sad. It is very sad. But I count myself, that's why I do count myself lucky. I mean, I did have I really did have the best treatment. I don't mind sharing this. I was treated at the Priory Hospital in North London, and by a leading psychiatrist who also has his own practice in Harley Street. I was one of the lucky ones. I had private treatment. It wasn't through the NHS, it was private treatment. But that's why I want to help people, because I can pass on my tips and strategies. This is what you can do to get you through some of the worst. But I would always say, no, go to your GP first as well. You must do that, because whilst I do have lots of tips and strategies, I'm not a medically qualified person. I can help put your mind at ease and give you some strategies that you can do on the spot when anxiety strikes. But they do need to go through a proper course, a proper course of therapy with qualified, medical consultants.
Well, let me ask you this, Jo, because you've suffered from this for 30 years, right?
Yes.
And you've overcome it. And,
yes.
And in our discussion today, you've shared some really, how would you say this, meaningful ways that people should be approaching it in the future.
Yes.
And some advice about consulting their doctor and et cetera. But there's a question that is in my mind, and that is, for you, Jo, why did you decide to help people overcome this disorder? What was the driving force for you?
The driving force for me is because obviously, it goes without saying, I really understand what they're going through. People who are suffering with social anxiety, just what they're going through on a daily basis. The turmoil, actually, I think is the right word. The turmoil that they undergo, that they feel every single day of their waking lives. It is a silent, it's a silent agony that they do go through. And gosh.
Is there a connection between social anxiety and suicide?
Well, yes. I would say that there is. I mean, I've heard and I've read online, I've read in the newspapers, I've heard of people who have committed suicide through social anxiety, and that I'm actually glad that you've just reminded me of that, Peter, because that actually just shows, that illustrates to everyone who doesn't know what it understands what it feels like, who are perhaps wrongly treat people who come across as anxious and are judging them. In fact, I would say to anyone who might be watching this as well, who doesn't suffer with social anxiety, but they cannot understand somebody they know who's got it. Well, why can't you just snap out of it? Because people have committed suicide. They can't snap out of it. Hence, that's why people have committed suicide, because it's that bad. It overtakes the person's life. They just feel so uncomfortable in social situations where they will because that's what they identified with me when I was in therapy, that I suffered from social isolation, which obviously goes hand in hand with social anxiety. It lends itself to social anxiety. That's all part and parcel of it. You retreat from society. You know, you kind of, you start to hide yourself away, and the danger is that you become aware that you're actually doing that, because the more that you retreat from society and you hide yourself away from home, because you start not to go out as much as everyone else does, you don't really realize that you're doing that, you see. And then, and obviously that's, you get yourself into a vicious cycle, and that's what keeps it alive. But as far as, you know, I understand firsthand how the person feels on a daily basis, that they're somehow inherently flawed, defective. I mean, they identify the defectiveness life trap in me. I think I mentioned that at the beginning when I was in therapy. Social isolation, and also actually a little bit of mistrust and abuse. Now the thing is, I mean, which might seem a bit strange to people, I came from a very loving family, you know, mother and father. I say very loving mother and father. But again, like the mistrust and abuse life trap, because you don't trust people, because because you're anxious and you probably haven't been so well received sometimes by a person who doesn't understand, and they've judged you, then that makes the person go away. And it makes it worse for them, because, I could tell that person I felt that they didn't receive me very well. And so it makes them retreat even more, and it makes them mistrust people. And I think that's why they identified that life trap in me as well. It's that vicious cycle that you find yourself on. But yes, but I totally understand. It's people do suffer in silence because they've lived with it for so long, and also they just think, well, I've lived with it for this long and for most of my life, but I'm beyond help, and they're never going to, I'm never going to feel that people will warm to me like I see that they perhaps warm to other people, and of course, you know, it's simply not true. But you have to work at it. You know, that's the first thing I will say. You know, I would never say to people, and that's what I hate about seeing lots of courses out there recently where you can overcome this in 30 days. It's a load of rubbish. You've suffered with it for X amount of years. It takes time. It takes time to understand. First of all, you need to understand what is driving that and have the treatment to correct that. It's by and large, it's about a lot of distorted cognitions, and obviously just a fancy word for your thought process is a lot of distorted thinking, and you need to understand what's initiating those distorted thoughts, but what to do about it. And it's only until you get the proper help that you'll understand what you can do when those automatic negative thoughts come into your head. And that's really what's happening with people who have social anxiety, is that you have a lot of automatic negative thoughts come into your mind, and that's what happened with me. And of course, there are several steps to take to address that automatic negative thought, and how you reframe the situation, and then what the solution is after you reframe the negative thought. Because a lot of things that were identified with my negative thoughts is that actually none of it was true. And it's like I said before, I think I said it at the beginning, that you tend to dig into your own head when you're suffering from social anxiety. You assume it's automatic negative thoughts, that, that's what they must be thinking. And it's only when you reframe it and you look back to that previous situation, you look back and you realise that, well, actually, I've been able to reframe it this way, that actually what I thought that other person was thinking of me, judging me, doesn't like me, is actually, you'll often find that it's not true as well. So, but
but to be able to do that, you need to go through some specialist help first to give you the strength to do that, right?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. But what I can do in the beginning is I can my aim, what I aim to do is I can put people on the right road to, well, it is a vicious, unfortunately, it is a vicious circle that you're in, that vicious cycle, but I can give, there's about 10 automatic negative thoughts that mainly occur when you've got social anxiety. So I will set them on the right road, but of course I'm not a qualified therapist. I'm not going to get on video and go into therapy with them like I'm a therapist, because I'm not qualified, but there's plenty of information that I can give people to set you on the right road, on the right path. But please, I say to anyone, please get help. You can overcome it. Please go to your doctor, get yourself referred to a specialist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, and go on that journey. And they'll find that they'll learn a lot about themselves, that they are a valuable person and they're actually better than they think they are as well, and that people do like you. It's just that when you dig inside your own head, and it's through no fault, that's you see, that's the problem with social anxiety. It's not your fault that when you automatically enter a situation that you feel so anxious. I mean, people do judge them in as much as, oh, what's the matter with you? Why don't you snap out of it? I can't believe, it's other people, because we're social, aren't we, as humans? We're social beings. What's the matter with you? You see, if they could snap out of it, they would. That's the thing, you see, and I know that that's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of worry and concern that people in my group, I've been noticing that when they just laughed at me, they judge me, because unless you've experienced social anxiety, you don't really truly understand, what it feels like. If you could automatically snap out of it, you would, and a lot of the time, with the best will in the world, you just cannot do it. And that's where the help comes in, you see. That's why you have to be referred to a specialist, because obviously, through no fault of your own, you haven't got the tools, you haven't got the strategies, you haven't got the tools, you don't really quite understand what's driving that, other than the fact that that you just feel that you don't measure up in some way to the next person.
The very fact that, this has been extremely interesting to me, and I'm sure very helpful to many people. And I thank you. I truly thank you, Jo, for being, how would you say, so transparent about your own challenges in life, because that will help people relate. They can see, this is me, I can relate to that. And with that in mind, can we get some contact details so people can actually reach out and take the first step? As you very clearly said, you're not a qualified psychologist or whatever it may be, but you can give people some advice to send them in the right direction. If that's the case, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, the best way they can contact me is they can contact me through my Facebook group, right? It's called Social Anxiety Solutions. That is the best way to contact me, because I would urge them to join the group, right? I'm not going to give out my email address, because I want them to join, to directly contact me through my Facebook group, right? Which is facebook.com/groups/social anxiety solutions, because I want them to join the group so that I can start them off on the right road, right? I'm always posting tips and strategies in there, giving them, as I say, sharing my story. And then the second way that they can approach me is to contact me is through my YouTube channel, it's the Social Anxiety channel. Again, because I post daily content there. And the way that my YouTube channel works is that obviously I will share my personal story with them, but it also works that I post regular daily tips and strategies again on my YouTube channel. It's basically a way for people to learn about social anxiety disorder if they suspect that they have it. I mean, I think most people that view my channel, they already know that they're suffering from social anxiety disorder. They've probably already had a diagnosis, or they probably just, they just know that they've got it. But my channel will start people on the right road to recovery, to advise them about how they must contact their doctor and ask for a referral to a psychologist. But I share a wealth of information, the signs and symptoms, the common signs and symptoms of social anxiety disorder, how it makes you feel on a daily basis, tips and strategies that help them when they're encountering different social situations as well, whether it's just one-on-one with the person, in a whole group of people, at work as well. Because, you've got to remember that this disorder affects people in all areas of their life, whether it's even with their own family, actually, as odd as that may seem, their own family, certainly with, the few friends that they probably have, definitely at work. And social anxiety affects children as well. I mean, I know that children suffer on a daily basis at school with it. So yes, so my Facebook group and my YouTube channel, it works through all the social signs and symptoms, gets them on the right road to recovery, and what they should do best. But the first thing they should do is please, I would urge anyone with social anxiety, please ignore the 30-day recovery programs that people are selling out there. I'm not trying to say that perhaps they are that they're bad in any way, but I just don't believe it's nonsense. You won't overcome social anxiety in 30 days. You won't even overcome it fully in 6 months. It's taken you X amount of years, a decade plus, all of your life, even in my case, to really get a sense of, do you know what? It's such a shame that I actually felt that way. But you can't help that, so you shouldn't be hard on yourself. It is what it is, social anxiety. It makes you think that way. It automatically makes you feel that you are defective in some way.
Jo, thank you. Thank you so very much. I mean, for people who are watching this, who even suspect they have some social anxiety, then I can assure you, by joining Jo's group on Facebook, it's a safe environment. It's an environment where you can actually learn without putting yourself out there in too much exposure, and just go step by step with you. Is that correct?
That is correct, definitely.
Well, that's a wonderful resource that people should know. I think that's very special, Jo. And I think you're pretty darn special as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Peter. And again, thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me. But I'm, as I say, I'm just trying to help where I can. I totally understand how it makes the person feel. I know how much it takes from their life, really, that they're not living life to the full. That's obvious. That goes hand in hand with the disorder, But it's a real shame, because you can overcome it. You can. And there's help out there, and I just want to help where I can. I'm happy. Actually, what I found was happened with me is that because I actually overcame social anxiety, when I actually really get chatting, people have actually said to me, do you know what? You would never even think that you actually had social anxiety disorder. When you start chatting, you're actually...
I was seeing the same thing right then.
So definitely. So yes, please. But again, thanks for having me, Peter, and it's my absolute pleasure to help where I can, share my tips and strategies. I'd be the first to say, please get help, folks, with but just go to your doctor, pour your heart out. It will serve you well, and they will point you in the right direction. But don't suffer in silence. You absolutely can overcome it, but it will take time. You've got to be prepared to put some effort in, and you will.
Absolutely wonderful advice. And
Brilliant.
More important, thank you for your inspiration. Very special.
Thank you very much, Peter. And
I
again,
truly enjoyed talking with you, and I hope people got real benefit from this.
thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.